Okay, so now we're going to do a slightly more complex example. This sentence, it's a little bit longer and more complex, but we handled this exactly the same way, all right? Now, this time we're going to need 3 columns over here for P, Q, and R. And that means that our table is going to need 2 to the third, or 8 rows. Again, I'm going to start making these columns from the right and work my way to the left. The right-hand column is always, the farthest right column is always just going to alternate TF, 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 TF. The next one is going to have blocks of 2 T's and then 2 F's. The first one is going to have blocks of 4 and so on. The first one should just split it, whatever the most left-hand column is, it should just split it in half, half T's and half F's. Okay, so this is probably the hardest part of this, is keeping everything nice and horizontal and making sure that you stay on the same row. That's why it's nice to do this on lined paper. So our main connective here, it's the ampersand, so we're going to do that last. Why don't we start over here with this disjunction? So a disjunction is true when either one of the disjuncts is true, right? If you needed to a reminder, you could look at the basic truth table of the disjunction. So anywhere P is true or Q is true, this is going to be true. So it's true on this first row. It's true on this second row. It's still true here, even though Q is false, T is true. Same thing here on the fourth row. On the fifth row, P is true, P is false, but Q is true. So our disjunction is still true. Sixth row, still true. Now, look on the seventh and eighth row, P is false and Q is false. So our seventh and eighth rows, this is false. All right? Now, before we can evaluate this conjunction, we need to come over here and look at this conditional, all right? So, again, working our way from the smallest scoped to the widest scoped connectives, we need to start with this negation. Now, this negation is going to be false wherever P is true and true wherever P is false. So we can just go down the line here, false, 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 because P is true, 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 and it's going to be true on the bottom 8 lines. Or sorry, bottom 4 lines. Okay? Now the disjunction, remember that's going to be true where either one of the disjuncts is true. Okay? Here, look, P is false, but Q is true, so it's true here. Q is true here. Q is false here, and so is not P, or negation P. So it's false here. What about here? Well, P is false, not P is false, and Q is false, so it's false there. And we know it's going to be true in all of these places because not P is true. All right. So we've evaluated this disjunction. Now, what about the conditional here? Well, remember, anywhere the antecedent is false, the conditional is going to be true. So it's true here. What about here? Well, look, this is the antecedent is true. The consequent, which is R, is false. So it's false there. False antecedent makes the conditional true. So now we're looking for any row where R is false, because we know that the antecedent is true in all these rows. So the conditional is true here. Oh, it's false here because it has the antecedent's true, but R is false. R is the consequent, right? It's true here because R is true. Here again we have a true antecedent, false consequent. So it's false there. So notice that this conditional, it scopes over this, right? So it has a wider scope than the disjunction. So now when we move to evaluate the conjunction, we look at this and this column and this column. We don't need to look at these anymore. In fact, we can get rid of them if you want, if that makes it easier for you to read. Okay, so remember, a conjunction is true only where both conjuncts are true, only where both sides of it are true. So true here, false here, true here, true here. So notice my table's getting a little wobbly here. This wasn't the best job. It's true here, false here, false here, and false here, right? Everywhere that there was an F in this column or an F in this column, we get an F in the middle here, okay? And now we want to circle this to show that this is where we need to be looking to evaluate the truth of the sentence, right? And it tells us, for example, whatever sentence P was, wherever that's true, wherever Q is true, and wherever R is true, then this is true as well. Say P is false, Q is true, and R is true. It's true there too. Let's say that P is false, Q is false, and R is false. Then this sentence is false in that kind of world, in that model. All right, so that tells us on what models this sentence is true and on what models it's false.